So my latest project is making lightweight compact shopping bags out of pillowcases that I bought from the op shop. So there's one that's already made up, and that's how tightly and small they fold up, and that's, as you can see, lovely and small. So that's great for holding in your handbag and so on. Anyway, I thought I'd show you how to make them because they're quite easy. It takes me about half an hour. Probably could get quicker, but anyway. Okay, so the first step is, with your pillowcase, is to sew down that top edge and then cut this excess off. The next step is to fold the pillowcase lengthways in 4. So we've got this edge, which is going to be cut off, and then this edge where it's just a single fold like that, that's actually going to form our handles. So I have a template which I've made up, but it's doesn't really matter. So we're going to cut down here a bit wider than the handles, and then around to here, and then the remaining length, that becomes the length of your bag. So depending on how long you want your handles, you can cut it where you like, but I've got a template that's been working and I'll use that. So I've now cut out that section. These bits are actually just waste. You can make little pockets out of them for your bag if you like. So when we open it up, we have the basic shape of the bag. Now, an important thing to note is that you don't sew these two edges here together. We actually sew the front to the front and the back to the back. But before we do that, got a bit of sewing to do, which is to overlock all these raw edges. Now that all my edges are overlocked, I'm going to sew the two sections of strap together, so laying one over the top of the other. I'm just going to sew with the normal sewing machine. I sew a square just for extra strength. Okay, so with the shoulder straps sewn together with the square, when you're doing it, you'll notice sometimes you'll get one wider than the other. That's a consequence of the folding method of cutting out the template. If that happens, put the wider one on top, because the next step is to actually fold down that that edge, that raw edge, and sew it under. So with the bigger one on top, it just neatly tucks underneath and it's not an issue at all. So I'm doing that next. So I've sewn my edges down. You can be as neat or as messy as you like with this. The first few pillowcases I've done were polyester or something, and they're quite lightweight, and I must admit with the cotton one, which this is, my sewing machine, which is just a cheapie, did struggle to get through all that thickness there, so I'll probably have to hand sew that little bit down, but anyway, if you've got a good machine you won't have a problem. So the bag's basically done, actually, like if you look at it. Yeah, the bag's finished, but we need to put on our little elastic tie there, which, as you can see, the placement of that's quite important. So what we're looking to do is, when you fold the bag in half, the handles are going to be in the middle of the half. Okay, so what we need to do is make sure that our little elastic tie is in the middle of the half when it's folded, so directly underneath the handles. That's where we want to put it. Now the length of the elastic needs to be obviously enough to fit around, so depending on your fabric as to how tight it will roll, you need to measure, roll it up and get your bit of elastic to go around it and cut it to not much bigger, because don't forget you want a bit of stretch in that to hold it together. So if you cut it to the size it is without the stretch, the bit that you sew in will tighten it enough to give you a bit of a stretch. Okay, so cut your bit of elastic. How we go about putting that in, I'll tell you in a moment. So I folded that one up, cut my piece of elastic to just fit around in an unstretched manner. Now we need to sew it into the bottom seam, as I've done here, directly beneath where the handle is. Doesn't matter which side or whatever, it's irrelevant. Now this particular pillowcase had a seam at the bottom, so I actually unpicked a small section of seam in order to poke that in there, and then turn the pillowcase inside out. Now the one we're working on here actually doesn't have a seam in the bottom, the print just changes. So I'm actually going to turn this inside out and then sew a seam all the way along the bottom. It just gives you extra reinforcing, and sew that in from the inside. So it's on the outside, turn the pillowcase inside out, so this will be encased in the pillowcase, and then sew a seam that will just catch that edge. I also use a tight buttonhole zigzag when I'm going over that section, just to give some extra strength, because that's going to get a bit of pull. So hopefully that extra zigzag, so I can go straight stitch, zigzag, zigzag, and then straight stitch. I mean, you don't have to do the seam all the way along the bottom, but it just looks a bit neater than having a little puckered bit here. So I'll do that now. So I've folded the pillowcase inside out, and inside is our loop of elastic, and I've just pinned it on that edge, so I'm going to sew along there to catch that loop of elastic. And there it is. So the bag's actually finished, except for one more thing. What we're going to do is strengthen these corners. Just gives you a better finish in the corners. Here's what it looks like, if you can see that. By just bringing those two seams, together in a triangle. It's hard to do one-handed, like so, and then sew across there. Okay, so those corners are done. Don't cut them off, because if that stitching comes undone, you've still got the integrity of the bag with the corners still intact. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to fold them. So to fold, step one is just fold it in half. It's interesting doing this all one-handed. Okay, sorry about the camera movement. All right, they're in half, the handles line up, you fold the handles down, you fold each side over the handles, so it's in thirds, and then starting at the handle end, you roll it up towards your little elastic band, and then you just flip that over the outside, which I cannot do with one hand, but you've seen the product before. So that's it. Happy hunting with trying to find nice pillow slips in op shops to make these.